Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's teleconference. My name is Cheri Gandy, and we're going to talk about Sophia today. I hope everyone's having a wonderful afternoon. And what inspired me to work on this theme of Sophia? It happened this summer when I went on the Rosicrucian initiatory journey to Egypt. And one site that was really inspirational to me was the Temple of Isis at Philae. And one of the questions I kept asking myself after the trip was, what can we still learn today from ancient Egypt? And so this led to my exploration of this topic of Sophia. So again, thank you for joining me. And we'll now go to the presentation, The Privilege of Sophia, Her Divine Wisdom in the Mysteries. And before we start, I would like to just talk about a couple of quotations that are brought to us from some women associated with the Rosicrucian order. And so the first quote here is by Helena Roerich, who was the wife of Nicholas Roerich, and they were prominent members of the order in the early 20th century. And she was a writer. And she said this beautiful quote that I wanted to share with you, which was, "You must remember that the grandeur of the cosmos is built by the dual origin." And what she means by dual origin is she's referring to the interplay of the masculine and the feminine principles in creation. And this is a recurring theme in her teachings and writings. The next quote is from Helene Bernard from the book Great Women Initiates. And she says, "Alone through the centuries, ideas and fashions, the Order of the Rose Croix has undertaken to preserve this natural and desirable balance that constitutes equality between man and woman. The uniting of the two polarities of expression, somewhat different on this earth, but blended one into the other in the heart of cosmic unity, our mother." So our first question is, who and what is Sophia? Now, Sophia means divine wisdom. And this wisdom, this type of wisdom, carries a broad connotation of divine insight and profound knowledge. And this is often found through experiential, direct experience, what we might call gnosis. And it's also the inherent wisdom embedded in creation. And this is the big knowledge. So she's also sometimes thought of as the primordial conscious intellect. And she's frequently, and the concept of wisdom, is frequently personified as a feminine divine figure. And so in many languages, we'll look at that. So in Greek, Sophia means wisdom. In Hebrew, Chokmah means wisdom. In Latin, sapientia means wisdom. And so we'll see those different words used today. And so in becoming a female figure, she's really an allegorical figure. And she's often referred to as the soul of the world. And you'll also find that the idea of her is woven throughout the tapestry of our mythology, our history, language, and our understanding of divinity. And this image is by the artist Judy Chicago. And she did a piece of art, a very big installation of art called The Dinner Party, with a whole table in the shape of a triangle with place settings of women important in history and feminine figures important in history. And so Sophia, being one of those, has her own place setting, and this is what it looks like. So Sophia has many different characters and different personifications. And so some of the characters we'll look at today are Isis, Lady Wisdom, Lady Sophia, the Celestial Sophia, Mary, and the Woman in the Woods. And then we'll look at, again, Sophia, celestial and earthly, and then Adam, both celestial and earthly, and Eve, celestial and earthly. So we'll begin with Isis. And this timeline is from the Rosicrucian Digest on Isis. And there's a wonderful timeline there that I can refer you to. It's a wonderful article. But the author of the timeline says that Isis worship began in the 27th century BCE and went all the way through the 6th century CE. So she's often identified with Sophia. And as a goddess, she's known for her loving, her healing, nurturing, her compassion, her civilizing presence, her protective sense. She's wise, and she's the divine mother to Horus. She's often called the Lady of the House of Life and the Mistress of Magic, and sometimes the Queen of Heaven and of Earth. And together with her divine consort Osiris, they both bring balance to the cosmos. And so she's also, of course, associated with wisdom and mystery. And she was frequently identified with different symbols, such as the serpent, who you can see she's here in this fresco with. This is a fresco from Pompeii, and she has a serpent around her wrist as a symbol of the secret hidden truth in wisdom. Another aspect of Isis worship was her way of speaking. And when she did this, she spoke about herself in a way where she extolled her virtues. And these are called erotologies. And these consist of narratives where she talks about her miraculous feats, her deeds, her virtues, and her different divine powers. And one example of this, and you all may have heard of this book, is in the book The Golden Ass by Apuleius. And in that book, there's a story of Lucius, who's a curious young man. He's fascinated by magic. And so he's playing around with magic, and he accidentally transforms himself into a donkey, an ass, instead of an owl. And so in his donkey form, he has a lot of adventures. So he has some brutal adventures, some comical adventures, but eventually he, feeling degraded, he prays for help to Isis, and he's eventually initiated into the Isis mysteries. And she restores him to human form and guides him towards a life of religious devotion. And here is her response when he asks her for help. She says, "Behold, Lucius, I am come. Your weeping and prayers have moved me to provide solace to you. I am she who is the natural mother of all things, mistress and governess of all the elements, the initial progeny of worlds, chief of powers divine, queen of heaven. I am the principle of the celestial gods, the light of the goddesses. At my will, the planets of the air, the wholesome winds of the seas, and the silences of hell are disposed. My name, my divinity, is adored throughout the world in diverse ways, throughout various customs and under many names." And this is from the book. Here's another example from the city of Simi in Greece. And here, this would have been in stone, and this would have been said by priestesses or priests of Isis when the goddess speaks about herself. She says, "I gave and ordained laws for men, which no one is able to change. I am wife and sister of King Osiris. I am mother of King Horus. I am she that riseth in the dog star. I am she that is called goddess by women. I divided the earth from the heaven. I showed the paths of the stars. I ordered the course of the sun and the moon. I devised business in the sea. I made strong the right. I brought together woman and man, and I revealed mysteries unto men." And in revealing mysteries to men, she carries the divine wisdom and is the divine mediator, transmitting that wisdom to humanity from her cosmic divine world. And this wisdom is considered secret spiritual knowledge of and in the mysteries. So as time continued, Lady Wisdom became personified in different forms, which we've talked about. And in the book of Proverbs, written between the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, she becomes a wisdom figure in while she speaks in the book of Proverbs, and it's written in Hebrew. And we'll look at a line from that in a minute. But this image here is actually of Hildegard Bingen receiving and recording some of her visions. And this image was created by the nuns in her abbey. And when Hildegard received visions, she had a number of different characters that would come to her. And one of these characters was Lady Wisdom. And in her writings, she often referred to Lady Wisdom as knowledge of God as the character name. So the knowledge of God also became personified to her as Lady Wisdom. And here's an example of what Lady Wisdom says in Proverbs. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works, before his deeds of old. I was appointed from eternity, from the beginning, before the world began. I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundaries so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth. And that's from Proverbs chapter 8, verses 20 through 22 to 29. And here, Lady Wisdom talks about how she was present before and during creation. And throughout Proverbs, she acts as a teacher. So she rewards those who follow her. She gives practical guidance for living a righteous life. And she's very reverent and respectful for God, which forms the foundation of true understanding. Now, at the same time that Proverbs was being written, Plato was also writing about wisdom in Greece. In his book, the Timaeus, he talks about the creation of the universe. And he talks about wisdom being this divine intellect in the universe. And he talks about how the creation of the universe and its order and its beauty are a result of wisdom's order and beauty, and how the universe is a product of rational, beneficent, divine, of a rational, beneficent, divine craftsman, or what he also calls a demiurge. And the universe's goodness comes from deliberate intent of that divine intellect. And we're also familiar with the term nous, and nous is also a word for divine intellect. And so this intellect and this wisdom is represented by the craftsman, by the demiurge. And so we, as souls, the more we can emulate the order and the beauty of the universe, the more we can approach the state of excellence, which was lost when humanity went from spiritual form into material form. And so for Plato, wisdom was this mediating force between the divine and creation, a conduit through which the divine energies pass and which end up incarnating in the universe. And now we'll see how this gets translated into the Book of Wisdom. So now we have the character Lady Sophia. And Lady Sophia was a personification of divine wisdom in the Book of Wisdom. And the Book of Wisdom is a book in some Bibles, and it was written between the 1st century BCE and the 1st century CE. And here, Sophia takes on a much broader dimension. So she becomes a divine emanation. She's actively involved in the creation and the governing of the universe and the salvation of people. So her scope becomes universal, and she has universal reach throughout all generations. And the Book of Wisdom was written in Greek, and it's not included in the Hebrew Bible, and it's not included in the Protestant Old Testament, but it is included in the Catholic and the Orthodox Old Testaments. And Martin Luther included it in his version of the German Bible. Now, this image is by a Ukrainian artist. Her name is Lubia Yatskiev, And this is an image of Sophia as holy wisdom. And here we see this beautiful image of Sophia in the place of where you would normally see Christ. And she's performing a Eucharist actually here. And I thought it was a beautiful image that represents this lady, Sophia. And here's what the Book of Wisdom says about Sophia. For she is a breath of the power of God and a pure emanation of the glory of the Almighty. Therefore, nothing defiled gains entrance into her. For she is a reflection of eternal light, a spotless mirror of the working of God, and an image of his goodness. Though she is but one, she can do all things. And while remaining in herself, she renews all things. In every generation, she passes into holy souls and makes them friends of God and prophets. For God loves nothing so much as the being who lives with wisdom. And that's from the Book of Wisdom, chapter 7, verses 25 through 30. And so here we see this idea of her passing into holy souls. And this is one reason she's sometimes called the soul of the world. And so we can see here that Sophia, in taking on this much larger dimension, she's now described in cosmic terms like the breath of life and being an emanation. So she's taken on a whole new level. And she's seen as a cosmic principle mediating between God and creation. She has a much more developed cosmology here. And again, similar to what Plato was saying about divine wisdom, we again see this quality of goodness being associated with divine wisdom and Sophia. So now we'll go into talking about Theosophy and Sophia. And Theosophy was a movement especially in Germany. And because Martin Luther included this in his translation or included the translation of the Book of Wisdom in his German Bible, this tradition of Theosophy developed in Germany. And so this movement developed around the concept of the celestial Sophia. So one of the primary sources of Theosophy was Jakob Boehme, and he has a very interesting story. And basically, he had a visionary experience when he was 25 and experienced a type of gnosis. And he was out in nature when this happened to him. And he said that this 15 minutes taught him more than a lifetime of reading books. And so this began his doctrines and his teachings and his writings on theosophy. And so a few principles behind his thoughts. So he talked about how the universe's harmony comes from divine wisdom. So it sounds very similar to Plato, but he was supposed to have been uneducated. And we don't know that he necessarily read Plato. And he talked about how in creation there was darkness. But even though Sophia was this organizing principle of the cosmos, of the universe, there was a period of darkness. And Sophia's light pierced through that darkness. And so she was right there as a source of light at creation. And so she became a mirror in which divinity could contemplate itself. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so he talked about how Adam's fall came when Adam contemplated himself in the material world, and this separated him from his celestial spouse, Sophia. And then, because of this, Adam became matter. And as matter, humanity, we're incomplete without union of the celestial Sophia. And so he talked about how it was important for us to be able to reunite with Sophia. And this could be done by undergoing a spiritual rebirth and dying to our ego selves in modern language. And he talked about how the ultimate goal is regeneration and spiritual rebirth. And that means that you have to completely die to your selfishness or maybe your wrathful nature. So, how did he talk about doing this? Well, the scholar Arthur Versluis has a wonderful summary of this, and he calls out a few different principles that Boehme talked about, which one is seeking direct inner experience, which we talked about earlier in the form of gnosis. So, this is prioritizing the inward spiritual illumination over external doctrines. So, Burma was very non-sectarian, so not necessarily of any type of denomination. It was really about the direct personal experience of the divine. And then also this idea of surrendering the self-will. And this allowed the light of Sophia to come in. And then also purifying the imagination with practices like prayer and contemplation. And then also this concept of transcending the astral, which is moving beyond the lower emotions and clearing out oneself, clearing out dogmatic thinking to allow, again, for the light of Sophia to come into the self. And all of this combined to result in a transmutation of the person into a new person. And so in the Sophia tradition, Jakob Boehme inspired many different philosophers and theologists and theosophers, and one of those was Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin. So Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, he described Jakob Boehme as his second teacher. Martinus de Pasquale, he described as his first teacher. But it's the teachings of Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin that we focus on in the traditional Martinist order. And many of the things that we talk about in his writings have a focus on the celestial spouse Sophia and this reunification with Sophia, similar to what Boehme was talking about. And according to Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, Sophia participates in this divine unity, as we've talked about before, and she helps to integrate the laws of creation. And like Boehme, he says that she's also a mirror in which divinity can reflect itself. And this is interesting because in one of his books, in the Ministry of Spiritual Man, Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin talks about how Sophia is a mirror for not just divinity to contemplate itself, but as we go about our lives, we also have so many what he calls smaller wisdoms that spring up around us, which reflect the fruit of our works. And so I think that's something that we can all identify with. And so we have this similar experience with our wisdoms that we come up with as the divine has through the larger divine wisdom in Sophia. And he has a quote from the book. He says, "For all spiritual and divine beings need these wisdoms to serve as mirrors to their own spirits, as they themselves serve the spirit of the divine." And so he and Boehme talked about this form of moral chivalry when it comes to the celestial Sophia, meaning we are to ready ourselves to wed and pursue the divine Virgin Sophia. And Boehme really referred to Sophia as the Virgin Sophia, this pure spirit. And again, this is one of the ideas behind the traditional Martinist order's idea of moral chivalry, because in that pursuit, again, we have this idea of goodness and virtue coming from Sophia and the pursuit of Sophia. So, a few other things about Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin and some of his ideas. And so, Sophia, which he saw as the spiritual earth in which the primordial androgynous Adam was created. And so then our idea is to, of course, unite with Sophia and then to seek reintegration. And this is very familiar to those of you who are Martinist. And in this reintegration, we help humanity return to its divine origin. And all of humanity must reintegrate together. So with Mary, he saw Mary as Sophia's human equivalent. And this is because he saw Christ as a spiritual being projecting himself into the mirror of Sophia, and he made himself incarnate through Mary, just like Adam became incarnated through Sophia in the spiritual world. So this leads us to another important early Rosicrucian figure, Johannes Kelpius. So Johannes Kelpius was very much influenced by Jakob Boehme, and we're familiar with him because he came over from Germany and formed what many historians call an early Rosicrucian settlement. And so in this settlement, many people from the outside referred to them as the woman in the woods community. And the woman in the woods is a reference to another divine Sophia character from the book of Revelation. And in this group, they had a number of mystical experiences together as a group. And Kelpius, leading the group, was known as a very well-educated theologian. And there's a quote, and again, this is from the Vers Lewis book. He wrote a book called Wisdom's Children and talks about this topic quite extensively. And he has this beautiful quote from one of Kelpius's contemporaries. And they say that Kelpius knew works of the rabbis, the heathen, and Stoic philosophers, and fathers of the Christian church. And so he was known well across the I'll say the Americas. And he traded letters with many different people. He had a little anchorite cell, which the location is still in Pennsylvania that you can visit. But he talked about practicing an inward prayer of silence with this inclination of the heart to the divine without thoughts, words, or images. And he talked about this unceasing prayer being this reciprocal union with the divine. He also wrote hymns invoking Sophia, and one of his main ideas that he reinforced was to know thyself, and that is through Sophia. Interestingly enough, his community also had an apocalyptic worldview. So everything that they were doing to purify themselves and to reunite with Sophia had an urgency to it. Their whole community was dedicated to spiritual life in this urgency for reunification with Sophia because they were waiting for the second coming. And this leads us to another early Rosicrucian that some historians define, Johann Conrad Beissel, who founded the community called Ephrata, which is still in Pennsylvania. You can visit the historical site there. And this is another community, came about 10 years after Kelpius passed on. And this community, again, was dedicated to spiritual practice and to what they call the harmonization of the soul and the unification with Sophia. And they were known as German pietists, and they led a contemplative, pious lifestyle. They're celibate. And again, they encouraged mystical experiences, experiments, prayer, and a lot of that happened through music. And so they had a similar idea where at the fall of Adam, Sophia departed from man. And so, again, similar theme. They were working to reunite themselves with Sophia. They also had an apocalyptic worldview, so this was very urgent. And another really interesting thing about Ephrata, this is a picture here of one of the hymn books. And so Conrad Beissel, he wrote hymns, and so did some of the women there in the community. They also wrote hymns. And in fact, some of the women are known as the first women composers in the Americas, in North America. And he talked about living an angelic and heavenly life on this order in order to realize fully the purest and cleanest spirit of everlasting celestial Sophia virginity. And on this next slide here, this is a quote that's on the wall in the Ephrata Museum close to some of the hymn books. And this is from a gentleman who said this in 1771 about the music. He said the music had little or no air or melody, but consisted of simple, long notes combined in the richest harmony. I almost begin to think myself in the world of spirits, and that the objects before me were ethereal. And so I love this quote. And um, the lyrics that they wrote at Ephrata spoke about the earthly preparation that the members had to go through for a heavenly life. And actually today, there's an Ephrata cloister chorus that sings and interprets some of the music. And you can also find some of their music on YouTube on the internet. So moving on, as we transition into our final exploration of Sophia, it's worth calling out a few similarities between the Gnostic and Theosophical traditions. And again, the scholar Arthur Versluis calls these out in his writings, and he summarizes it very well. But we'll cover a couple of those. So the Sophia divine wisdom was something that both traditions had in common. And they both emphasize Sophia as a feminine personification of divine wisdom, though very different personifications. Both also had an inward realization toward spiritual experience or gnosis over received doctrine. And this goal is inward transformation and illumination. And then they also both focused on what we might call the bridal chamber or the inward marriage. So using imagery of a mystical union between man and or humanity, again with the celestial Sophia, and with the giving birth to the Logos in the soul, and the soul being clothed in light. And then finally, this constraining spirit force. So in the Gnostic world, they had a story about a demiurge, but a demiurge that was not a good creator of the world. And then the Theosophist had this concept of spiritus mundi, which was the spirit of this world, which was the world of matter. And both had a sense of being trapped or enclosed within this world of matter, and that's why we need to escape. So now we'll talk about the Gnostic Sophia. And so we'll do this through exploring a text called Thunder Perfect Mind. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of background over the next few slides, and then we'll do a reading of Thunder Perfect Mind. So this text was written in the 2nd century. It was found in Egypt. And the copy that we have today, they think was transcribed by monks in the 4th century, but originally written in the 2nd century. So the copy we have is in Coptic. It's part of the Nag Hammadi find that was unearthed in the sands of Egypt in 1945. And it's very different than most of anything else that came out of Nag Hammadi in that it has a divine feminine context and voice. And it references some related text. Some of those you may have heard of before. One is called Three Forms of First Thought or Divine Intellect. And that was the other piece found in Nag Hammadi that focused on the divine feminine. And a couple of others on the origin of the world and the reality of the rulers. Those both contained central tenets of a type of Gnostic myth. And then finally, a piece called the Gospel of Eve, which has been lost to us today. We just have tiny fragments through other classical sources, but we don't actually have any of that in manuscript form. And so with Thunder Perfect Mind, some consider it to be a poem. Other scholars, like Nicola Dinsey Lewis, consider maybe it was a hymn, or maybe it was meant to be sung or chanted during ritual. So when you hear it, think of ideas that might come to you. How do you think it might be presented or have meant? So this copy here, this picture, this image is actually a picture from one of the pages of the manuscript that was found. This is just a copy, but there is the entire original set is in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. So a few words about the content and style. So a female speaker is speaking. It's an unnamed form of Sophia. You'll hear a lot of riddles. With the name Thunder Perfect Mind, it's a really interesting name. So the thunder comes from a voice of thunder. So there are other pieces where this divine feminine voice is coming through the clouds, and her voice of thunder has cosmic implications, cosmic reverberation. So that's what the thunder is referring to. And the perfect mind is referring to the primordial divine intellect, what we're familiar with hearing back a few minutes ago with the concept that Plato talked about. And you'll also hear a number of the I am statements. So similar to what we heard Isis say and how she referred to herself. So there are also a number of riddles and some paradoxical statements. But one of the other most interesting things is this is believed to have been authored by women, which is very rare in classical literature and in the Nag Hammadi find. And this is one example of some of the paradoxical language that you'll see in the text, that you'll hear in the text. For instance, she says, "For I am the first and the last. I am the honored and the scorned." So, what kind of audience was Thunder Perfect Mind for? This is the question that we ask, and it's different across time. But back then, it was a Gnostic community. They may have had women leaders, as the scholar Nicola Dinsey Lewis talks about, and they may have experienced violence at the hands of the Romans. They performed rituals, sacraments, baptisms, prayer, and they also used vowel sounds. And interestingly enough, they also had an apocalyptic worldview. They perceived that the second coming was imminent. So when they were going through their sacraments, it was done with a sense of urgency and purpose. So now, today, modern audiences have access to this astounding text. And the influence you can especially see through a number of different forms of art. There have been books, plays, film, music that all refer back to this piece, Thunder Perfect Mind. And the author Umberto Eco quotes from it in his book, Foucault's Pendulum. He has a Sophia character that quotes from it. Toni Morrison quotes from it in two of her books, Jazz and Paradise. And in her book, Paradise, she uses it to frame the relationship between an outsider community of women and the patriarchs of the town. And the patriarchs consider their town to be a paradise that the women might be ruining. And there's also films that refer to it. One is Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust. Jordan Scott, Ridley Scott's daughter, also had a film based on Thunder Perfect Mind. And so its threads are really everywhere. And even in the Rosicrucian Digest, the one on the sacred feminine, there is a section pulled out that's a hymn of Isis. And there's an article on it in the digest. And the version of Thunder Perfect Mind that we'll be reading has been translated by scholar Marvin Meyer, and he translated a number of the Nag Hammadi texts. Before we read it, I want to give you a little bit of the history of the mythology so that you have some context and you know what's happening with the voice of the speaker. So, divinity, the wider divinity, resides in the pleroma, the highest spiritual universe. This is in the Gnostic myth. And Sophia is one of the divine emanations from the pleroma. And she's not created. She's an emanation that is part of divinity. Now, emanations normally occur in pairs, so feminine and masculine together. Sophia chooses, in this case, to create by herself without her paired emanation, and things don't go very well. She ends up creating an imperfect offspring called the demiurge. And the demiurge, as an imperfect creature, creates an imperfect material world. And he's angry and he's vengeful. And he has an army of spiritual creatures that help him control the material world. And so he attempts to create life and can only create an inanimate body. And this is Adam. But Adam is not alive. Now, Sophia, in the form of celestial Eve, enters Adam's body and gives him life. And so Adam is now human. Once Adam is human, he's split into two forms, male and female. And now we also have Eve, the celestial Eve, has given birth also to the earthly Eve character. So now both Adam and Eve have been given life by celestial Eve. They both retain this connection to the divine, and they have a divine spark that the demiurge does not have. The demiurge is jealous and angry, and Eve is treated quite poorly. So now Adam and Eve are trapped in the material world and under the control of the angry demiurge. So Sophia, as celestial Eve, wants to improve this situation, and she communicates with Eve through the serpent. And when she's communicating through the serpent, she tells Eve the secret to escaping the trap of the material world, which is to seek knowledge and wisdom. Now, I mentioned before the Gospel of Eve, and even though it's lost to us, the one piece we do know is that one ancient source says that the Gospel referred to how Eve discovered the food of gnosis through revelation spoken to her by the snake. And Bentley Leighton, a scholar of these texts, puts it well when he says that the female spiritual principle returns in the snake to teach Eve the good news of liberation. So in Thunder Perfect Mind, one of the main riddles is who is the speaker? Which form of Sophia is she? And he believes the speaker is Eve, that celestial Eve is speaking to us through the earthly Eve, which means that she is speaking to humanity, showing humanity about the imminent presence of a savior principle in the world. And so the main riddle, even though he thinks it's Eve, the answer is Eve, could be another form of Sophia. So when you listen, see what you think. But being immanent, divinity and Sophia are within every person, no matter what her form, and her relationship, the relationship with her is humanity's birthright. So Eve, as this messenger, carries the wisdom of celestial Sophia within her. And Sophia, through coming to know her, we come to know ourselves. And by coming to know ourselves, we come to know her. And I think this is one of the reasons why this piece is still so poignant and popular today, because she, in her many forms and voices, is still here and she's still speaking to us. And you can experience it for yourself because we're going to read it for you now. I'm joined by Dana Leeson, and together we'll perform a reading of Thunder Perfect Mind. So in this painting here, it's framing our reading today. And this is a painting by Nicholas Roerich, and it's called Sophia, Wisdom of the Almighty. And as we read Thunder Perfect Mind, I invite you to use this as an opportunity to connect consciously with Sophia. I also invite you to relax and sit comfortably in whatever way works for you, and to close your eyes. When your eyes are closed, take 3 deep breaths. Empty your mind and listen to the words of Sophia expressed through her many forms.
Thunder, perfect mind. I was sent from the power and have come to those who contemplate me and am found among those who seek me.
Look at me, you who contemplate me, and you who hear, listen to me. You awaiting me, take me to yourselves. Do not banish me from before your eyes. Do not let your voice be hateful toward me, nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me in any place at any time. Be alert. Do not be ignorant of me.
For I am the first and the last. I am the honored and the scorned. I am the whore and the holy. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am the limbs of my mother. I am a barren woman who has many children. I have had many weddings and have taken no husband. I am a midwife and a woman who does not give birth. I am the solace of my own birth pains. I am bride and groom, and my husband produced me. I am the mother of my father and the sister of my husband, and he is my offspring. I am the servant of him who fashioned me. I am the ruler of my offspring. He produced me with a premature birth, and he is my offspring born on time. And my strength is from him. I am the staff of his power in his youth, and he is the rod of my old age. And whatever he wishes happens to me. I am silence that is incomprehensible, and insight whose memory is great. I am the voice whose sounds are many, and the word whose appearances are many. I am the utterance of my own name.
You who hate me, why do you love me? And hate those who love me. You who deny me, confess me, and you who confess me, deny me. You who tell the truth about me, tell lies about me. And you who have lied about me, tell the truth about me. You who know me, be ignorant of me. And as for those who have not known me, let them know me.
For I am knowledge and ignorance. I am shy and bold. I am shameless. I am ashamed. I am tough and I am terror. I am war and peace.
Be attentive to me. I am disgraced and great. Be attentive to my poverty and my wealth. Do not be arrogant toward me when I am thrown down on the ground, and you will find me in those who are to come. If you see me on the dung heap, don't go and leave me thrown down there. You will find me in the kingdoms. If you see me when I am thrown out with the disgraced in the most sordid places, don't mock me. Don't throw me down violently with those in need. I am compassionate and I am cruel. Take care not to hate my obedience, but love my self-control. In my weakness, do not disregard me, and do not fear my power.
For why do you despise my terror and denounce my pride? I am present in all fears, and I am strength in agitation. I am a weak woman, and I am well in a pleasant locale. I am foolish, and I am wise. Why have you hated me in your counsels? Because I shall be silent among the silent, and I shall appear and speak. Why have you hated me, you Greeks? Because I am a barbarian among barbarians? For I am the wisdom of the Greeks and the knowledge of the barbarians. I am the judgment of Greeks and barbarians. I am the one whose image is great in Egypt and who has no image among the barbarians. I have been hated everywhere and loved everywhere. I am the one called life, and you have called me death. I am the one called law, and you have called me lawless. I am one you pursued, and I am one you seized. I am one you have scattered, and you have gathered me together. I am one before whom you have been ashamed, and you have been shameless to me. I am a woman who does not celebrate festivals, and I am she whose festivals are many. I, I am godless, and I have many gods. I am one you have professed, and you have scorned me. I am uneducated, and people learn from me. I am one you have despised, and you profess me. I am one from whom you have hidden, and you appear to me. Whenever you hide, I shall appear. For whenever you appear, I shall hide from you.
As for those who have foolishly taken me away from their understanding, from grief, and receive me from understanding and grief. Receive me from low places in creation, and take from the good, even if in a lowly way. From shame, take me to yourselves shamelessly. From shamelessness and shame, put my members to shame within you. Draw near to me. Do you know me? And you who know my members, and establish the great among the insignificant first creatures. Draw near to childhood, and do not despise it because it is small and insignificant. Do not make what is great turn away, part by part, from what is small. For what is small is known from what is great. Why do you curse me and honor me? You have smitten and you have shown mercy. Do not separate me from the first ones whom you have known. Do not cast anyone out, nor turn anyone away. Turn yourselves. Do not know what is mine. I know the first ones, and those after them know me.
I am perfect mind and rest. I am the knowledge of my search, the discovery of those who seek me, the power of powers through my knowledge of angelic ambassadors, through my word of gods among gods, through my counsel of spirits of all people dwelling with me, of women dwelling within me. I am honored and praised and scornfully despised. I am peace, and war has come because of me. I am alien and citizen. I am substance and a woman without substance. Those from union with me are ignorant of me, and those sharing in my being know me. Those near me have been ignorant of me, and those far from me have known me. On the day I am near you, you are far from me, and on the day I am far from you, I am near you. I am a lamp of the heart. I am of natures. I am of the creation of spirits and the request of souls. I am restraint and lack of restraint. I am unity and dissolution. I abide and dissolve. I am descent and people ascend to me. I am judgment and pardon. I am sinless, and the root of sin comes from me. I am desire outwardly, and within me is self-control. I am hearing adequate for everyone, and speaking that cannot be repressed. I cannot talk or speak, and plentiful are my words.
Hear me in gentleness, and learn from me in roughness.
I am the woman crying out, and I am cast upon the face of the earth. I prepare bread in my mind within. I am the knowledge of my name. I cry out and I listen. I appear, walk, seal, sign of refutation. I am the judge. I am the defense. I am the one called justice, but violence is my name.
You honor me, you who overcome, and you whisper against me, you who are overcome. Judge before you are judged, because in you are judge and partiality. If you are condemned by it, who will pardon you? Or if you are pardoned by it, who can detain you? For what is within you is outside you, and the one who fashions you on the outside has formed you within. What you see outside you, you see within you. It is visible, and it is your garment. Hear me, you listeners, and learn my words, you who know me.
I am hearing adequate for everything. I am speaking that cannot be repressed. I am the name of the voice and the voice of the name. I am the sign of the letter and the indication of division. I, light and shadow.
Hear me, you listeners, take me to yourselves. As the Lord, the great power, lives, the one who stands will not change the name. It is the one who stands who created me. I shall utter his name. Look at the words of this one in all the text that have been written. Pay attention, you listeners, and you also, you angels, and you who have been sent, and you spirits who have risen from the dead. I alone exist, and I have no one to judge me, for there are many sorts of seductive sins and deeds without restraint, and disgraceful desires and fleeting pleasures that people embrace, until they become sober and rise up to their place of rest. They will find me there, and they will live and not die again. As we come back to objective consciousness, open your eyes and take a deep breath as we come back from a different place and a different time. In this piece, Sophia sounds both ancient and modern. I think this is why so many contemporary audiences find inspiration in this piece of second century scripture, and why they want to bring her into our present day experience. She is ancient and modern, and she's available and waiting for us. She's in us and is waiting for us to find her. As we work in our sanctums and perform our exercises and work with our master within, we come to know ourselves more and more, and thus know divine wisdom. We, as humanity, we have the privilege of Sophia in her many forms and her many voices. And whether it's the great Isis, or the Sophia of Proverbs, or the Book of Wisdom, or the celestial Sophia that we need to wed for reintegration, or whether it's the Sophia of great wisdom and knowledge from the primordial tradition, or the fierce and compassionate voice of thunder, perfect mind. I hope this talk has inspired you to explore your relationship with Sophia, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. Peace profound.